Hey, Reconciled Church, Pastor Kevin here, back with another one of our lessons in doctrine. If you've been with us for the last 15 weeks now, or 14 weeks prior to today, we've been going article by article through our Confession of Faith, the New Hampshire Confession of Faith, and basically explaining what each article means to give you a fuller understanding of what we believe as a church. So this week is not what I don't think this week's a very tough one. But we'll get into it. It's on what it refers to as the Christian Sabbath, or what you'll usually hear me refer to as the Lord's Day. That is Sunday when we gather for worship. So let's talk about it. First off, the article for the Christian Sabbath. We believe that the first day of the week is the Lord's Day, or Christian Sabbath, and is to be kept sacred to religious purposes by abstaining from all secular labor whenever possible and sinful recreations, by the devout observance of all means of grace, by both private and public, and by preparation for rest, which remaineth for the people of God. Okay. I added the words whenever possible to our statement of faith, so it originally just reads, by abstaining from all secular labor. I wrote by abstaining from all secular labor whenever possible, for a very simple reason. We live in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is a 24-hour town, and so there are a number of jobs that a person might hold where they do not control their schedule, and they get scheduled to work on a Sunday. So what I would suggest anyone in that situation is see if you can get your schedule changed if possible. So we gather right now Sundays at like 10 in the morning. Some of you guys, you work graveyard or whatever. I don't exactly know when graveyard shift is because it doesn't actually make sense to me, but I know it's sometime either early in the morning, late at night. Anyways, so if you work one of those crazy schedules, or you just have to work on a Sunday at times, it may be not possible for you to gather at that time. That said, we understand that there are different factors for which you might have to. It might be wise to, not leave your job simply because of this. If you've got a family to take care of, you should take care of your family. Not saying you should never go to church, but what we're saying is we understand that there are certain circumstances for which a person might not be able to make it on a particular Sunday, and we acknowledge that. We don't think you're in sin by doing that. That said, I would highly encourage a person to do whatever in their power to be able to gather with us for worship on Sunday mornings. So, with that said, there's really only two questions I wanted to look at with you guys this week. First off, what's a Sabbath? And then second off, why Sunday? So, what's a Sabbath? Well, Sabbath is something instituted at creation, essentially. God created the world, and on the seventh day, he rested. And so the Jewish people have acknowledged that by resting from all their work and all their efforts and all their labor and on the seventh day of the week, which, generally speaking, is Saturday. Sunday is the first day of the new week. So the passage for what a Sabbath is comes from Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11, which reads, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in the 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy." Okay, so what the idea is that we labor and work 6 days of the week, and then as a sign of faith, we rest on the seventh day. It's a way of showing that ultimately it's in God's hands, and we trust him with this. It's a way of laying aside our own effort and saying, look, I don't control the universe. I don't keep my entire life spinning. God's got it, and so I trust him with that, and therefore on the seventh day I don't work. Now, question is, why do we celebrate this on Sunday rather than Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath? And the reason for it has to do with the fact that we're Christians. and specifically because of the resurrection. So Jesus resurrected on the first day of a new week. I'll explain that. Mark chapter 16, starting in verse 2, it says, "And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb, and they were saying to one another, 'Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance of the tomb?' And looking up, they saw the stone and had been rolled away. It was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And he said to them, 'Do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him.'" Okay, so idea is we who are in Christ are a new creation. Jesus rose again on the first day of the week, so Christians have historically taken the first day of the week to acknowledge, to recognize as a day of worship, which we refer to often as the Lord's Day. Now, the Bible does show that certain things were already taking place in the New Testament where Christians were gathering on the first day of the week. Let me just give you a few of those. In Acts chapter 20, verse 7, we read, "On the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he prolonged his speech until midnight." Okay, so notice something here. It says they were gathered together to break bread on the first day of the week. This implies that there was something already in place, that they regularly were doing this. Now, often what would happen is some of the Jewish believers, Paul in particular, would go on the seventh day to temple and would reason with the Jews and explain through the Old Testament that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. So it was sort of a day for evangelism that he would often do. But we also see the new Christian church also gathering together on the first day of the week. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, we read, "Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I directed the churches of Galatia, so all you are to do also. On the first day of the week, each of you is to put something aside and store it up as he may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come." Okay, so notice that there's a collection which is taking place on the first day of the week. This suggests that there was some significance there, that they were specifically supposed to look at this. They were supposed to be able to look at their work at the end of the week and go, okay, I'm going to put aside something for this. A lot of this also is rooted in the history of the church. Christians have always met on Sundays to gather together, to worship together, to take the Lord's Supper together, to sit under biblical preaching. These are all things that the church would do. So this is what makes up a church. And when they gather together, it has usually been on a specific day, which is we refer to as the Lord's Day. The idea there behind this, as I said, is a resting in our faith. Part of faith is working, but part of faith is resting. It's trusting in God's sovereignty and His provision and such. And so what the church has always held is that you take one day out of the week specifically to rest from your labor, to trust in the Lord, to gather for worship. It doesn't mean that you do nothing. For example, notice that it says to refrain from all secular labor. Basically, you would see that for someone like me. I do specific work and labor on Sundays. That's when I preach and such. And a number of people work and volunteer in our church on Sunday mornings, which I'm super thankful for, guys. But the idea is behind this is to remember. So where in the Old Testament, it was looking back at the idea that God created the universe and then rested. Here, the significance has to do with looking forward to a rest that is to come. The Bible talks about this idea that there is still a Sabbath rest that is coming for God's people. That is when we rest from all this is what we talk about of resting from the struggles of this life. the curse of sin. When Christ comes again and restores the world to the way it was always meant to be, this is viewed as a Sabbath, specifically almost an eternal Sabbath. In that sense, we'll both work and serve the Lord, but also rest in the Lord. And so that's the idea there. So that's why we gather on Sunday mornings. If you've been curious about that and wanting to check that out, love to have you join us. And I will be back here next week with another in our Doctrines series.